So week one review, Kansas City definitely looked really good against New England. I think the game though was more about how bad New England looked more than how good Kansas City looked. I liked New England to win the game, and Kansas City came out on top. Just looked better in all aspects of the game. Defense, special teams, and even on offense. Kareem Hunt looked like a very good back. I kind of thought that they would have a share time type thing with Shattuck West and stuff like that, but he definitely looks like he's getting the RB1 workload, which is good for fantasy owners. And I wouldn't read too much into the New England loss. I think they'll bounce back next week. Just tough opener. I think Bill Belichick definitely prepares better when he gets a week of film to watch. And he didn't really have that luxury with it being week one. I guess you got to watch some preseason. I don't know how much the preseason would help you though. But Kansas City looked really good. We knew Kansas City was one of the better teams. But after this game, it definitely solidified that they're up there with the top teams. The Jets and Buffalo, it was a pretty close game. Buffalo, McCoy had a good game. Tyrod Taylor had a good game, and Jets just couldn't really score offensively. They did cut it close. It was 12-14 at one point, but then Buffalo was able to win 21-12. Atlanta had a real close game with Chicago. Chicago was impressive. Tariq Cohen was very impressive, running back out of North Carolina A&T. Jordan Howard had a TD. So those guys did good. They played real close. Glennon had a real good game. He did a lot of check downs. He didn't try to do anything crazy. They did lose Kevin White at wide receiver. They lost Cameron Meredith earlier in the year. Atlanta, a lot of people said that Atlanta might have a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover. It looked like they did. Julio didn't have a huge game. Freeman didn't have a huge game. Matt Ryan did all right. Austin Hooper was the big guy that had a huge game for them. Baltimore and Cincinnati, Andy Dalton just had too many turnovers in the red zone, and Baltimore jumped all over them. It was one of those games. To me, Flacco and Dalton are basically the same. If they can go down the field and make the fucking passes that are there, then they're good. But if they have to do anything more than that, then they throw picks, then they fumble the ball. So, and this is a game that usually Cincinnati, I think, would be in. They might be down. They might have been down by like 7 at the end, but Baltimore just, shut them down 20-0. Pittsburgh actually had a pretty close game with Cleveland. Le'Veon Bell looked really bad. Antonio Brown was basically Pittsburgh's entire offense. They scored 14 points offensively. Defense blocked a punt for a touchdown. J.T. Watt had 2 sacks and a pick, which was good for him. Cleveland, DeShone Kizer didn't look terrible. But it looks like Cleveland, I think Cleveland's not going to be anything crazy this year. But I think they'll definitely, play better than they have in the last couple of years. Arizona, Detroit. Arizona was able to get out to a 10-0 lead after a pick, but they only had 29 total yards. Their offense was nowhere to be found all day. Detroit eventually got it going. 10 catches to Golden Tate. Kenny Golladay had 2 TDs. Stafford had 4. So Detroit looked really good. And then also David Johnson got hurt. So that's tough. Jacksonville and Houston. I had Houston to win this game, but Jacksonville's defense just came out and killed Tom Savage. They had to put Deshaun Watson in. Watson played a little bit better. I don't know who will start this next week, but Jacksonville's defense was very strong. Looked really good. Really helped out the offense. Allen Robinson did go down with the injury. Fournette carried the ball 27 times for 100 yards. So if you picked up Fournette, hopefully they continue with this heavy run game in Jacksonville. That's what they were good at back in the day when they had David Garrard. They had Maurice Jones-Drew, and they had I think Fred Taylor. Those 2 guys. They used to run the ball a whole lot and have a good defense. So hopefully they're getting back to that. Houston looked atrocious though. Oakland and Tennessee. I actually thought Tennessee could pull this game out. Ryan Suckup was probably their top fantasy player. Mariota had a good game, but Suckup was really good. He kicked a lot of deep field goals, a lot of good field goals. For Oakland, Carr played really good. Lynch, didn't do crazy fantasy-wise. I think he only had about 70, 75 yards rushing, and he didn't score any TDs. But he had a solid game. He had some big plays in the game. And then their field goal kicker, Trevecchio, who had to replace Janikowski, had a big game. I might look to be picking him up picking him up if I need a field goal kicker. Philadelphia, Washington. Philadelphia really hurt the Redskins by with turnovers. Cousin had a pick late in the red zone. He fumbled early. He had another fumble late. Cousins had turnovers all day. And it just kind of helped Philadelphia out. Wentz had a play where he was able to escape and find Nelson Aguilar down the field, and that was a big play to start the game off for Philadelphia, and they kind of never looked back. They were up 19-17 late. Washington had the ball. Controversial call where Kirk Cousins thought his hand was going over, or he thought his arm was going forward, is what I should have said. And they said it was a fumble that got returned for a touchdown, and that kind of busted it open. Indianapolis and the Rams, the Rams and Jacksonville looked really good this week because of their defenses. Indianapolis looked like the worst team in the NFL to me. Obviously they have Scott Tolzien as their quarterback. He didn't look ready at all. Rams jumped all over him. Goff didn't really have to do a whole lot. Gurley, they just kind of ran their offense, and eventually they scored. Seattle, Green Bay, this is one of the games of the week. Seattle didn't come to the game to play. Their defense did, but their offense did, and their offense looked terrible. They scored 9 points, 3 field goals. And then Green Bay was able to muster up just enough to get a touchdown. I think they scored 2 TDs, but they did just enough to win the game, 17-9. It was a close game throughout. Honestly, pretty boring game. I kind of knew Green Bay was going to win, but it was one you kind of watched because you didn't know if Seattle was going to come back. But Seattle just never woke up. And it's funny, Seattle can be asleep the whole game and they can still almost win it. It's ridiculous. Sometimes Seattle doesn't wake up until like the last 5 minutes of the game, and then somehow they win it. Carolina, San Francisco, I was not impressed with McCaffrey. I was not impressed with Cam Newton. Cam Newton missed multiple touchdown throws that I remember seeing. San Francisco, they had a couple injuries on defense, but I think San Francisco is going to be better than people project this year. I've said that, but they didn't look that awesome in the first game. Hoyer looked terrible. Not huge on the ground game either. Carolina just kind of just got all over them. Giants, Cowboys. This was really not that great of a game. Cowboys just ran the ball the entire game, jumped on them early, do what the Cowboys do. Cowboys have one of the best game plans. Just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. It's funny. Dak will have 250 yards and a TD afterwards, and on ESPN you'll hear about Dak Prescott and how good of a game Dak Prescott just had. But in reality, Dak Prescott really doesn't have to do anything. He does short little passes to Witten, to Williams, to Cole Beasley. How often do you see him stretch the ball down the field to Dez Bryant? Never. And so, he dinks and dunks the whole game, and then before you know it, he's thrown however many passes and he's got however many yards, and it looks good. But in reality, he throws the same type of passes that Sam Bradford threw last year. Now, Sam Bradford last night, he fucking let it go. Bradford was letting it go last night, but I don't get into the Dak Prescott hype. He doesn't really have to do anything. He's a game manager. He's not this fucking Tom Brady that they try to make him out to be. Giants looked bad. Their offense was nowhere. They couldn't run the ball. No Odell. Brandon Marshall and Eli Manning didn't look good together as I projected. I didn't think they'd be good. And then the Saints looked terrible last night. Saints offensive line was atrocious. I know they're playing Minnesota's defense, but it was terrible. And then Minnesota, New Orleans has a terrible secondary. They have a terrible defense in general, but they got picked apart by Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen was just they couldn't find either of them. And this is a problem that New Orleans has had for years. It's almost like Sean Payton is over here so concerned about making play calls and doing this and doing that on the offensive end, he forgets that his defense is fucking atrocious. And then on the offensive end, they weren't even able to keep up with Minnesota. They lost by 10. Breeze was sacked all day. Couldn't get the ball to Michael Thomas. They couldn't spread the ball out. And the running back situation is just terrible. They play Alvin Kamara more than they play any other back. Ingram played probably more than Peterson. Peterson played the first possession, and he played some in the second half. But Peterson was basically non-existent. Peterson looked very frustrated at the first of the game. I'm like, they're talking about how this is going to be the first time Peterson doesn't have to run with 7 or 8 in the box. Because Breeze is going to check out of it, or if there are that many, he'll check out of it, or if it looks like a good run, he'll check into a run. Nothing but good things that Drew Brees is going to help Adrian Peterson. But the reality of the situation is Sean Payton doesn't give a fuck if it's Adrian Peterson or if it's freaking Alfred Morris back there. He doesn't care who it is. He's gonna run who he wants to run. He ran probably, I think Kamara played the most plays out of any back. Thinking back to last night, I think Alvin Kamara was in more plays than Peterson and maybe Ingram. And then Chargers, Denver. Denver basically handled this game. Chargers didn't play that great at the first in the middle of the game. I'd say they Denver was able to go up 21-7, but then in the fourth quarter, C.J. Anderson fumbled, Jamal Charles fumbled. And so then they were able to get back into the game, and it was 21-24. Broncos missed a field goal, and then when time ran out, the Chargers had a chance to make a field goal, and it got blocked. So they didn't force it to overtime. Tough game for them. Good win for Denver. And so then let's talk about this next week. Texans-Bengals, a game of some teams that played really bad last week. They combined for a total of 7 points, I think, last week. And so this is going to be a defensive battle. I'll take the Bengals to win the game. I think Andy Dalton bounces back. I think Texans quarterback situation is a little bit more up in the air. We don't know if Savage is starting. We don't know if Watson is starting. So we'll see what happens there with that. I'll take Bengals for sure. I think it'll be a defensive game. Whoever's defense plays better is going to win this game. Browns-Ravens, I'll take Ravens for sure. I think Ravens defense will have a big game. I think Flacco will game manage just enough to beat the Browns. Bills-Panthers, this is a game earlier in the preseason. I probably would have picked the Panthers. But I like the Bills in this game. Sean McDermott, he knows the Panthers offense. He used to run it. He looked good. The offensive scheme looked good on Sunday with the Bills, and I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I don't think Cam Newton's ready yet. He didn't look ready game 1 against the 49ers. I don't think he's going to be ready week 2 for the Bills. Easiest game of the week, Cardinals versus Colts. I think Cardinals slaughtered the Colts. Definitely if Luck's not playing. I don't think Luck's playing for sure. But, yeah, Cardinals are going to destroy Colts even without David Johnson. Pick up Kerwin Williams if you need a back. If you lost David Johnson, Kerwin Williams will be a good back to pick up. Titans, Jags. I'm not going to read into the Jags defense too much. And, let's see what happens this week against the Titans, an actual reputable opponent. I'll take Titans to win the game. I think Jags' offense goes back to what it was when they didn't have the defensive support that they had last week. Eagles, Chiefs, I think will be a good game. I'll take Chiefs to win the game. I think Kareem Hunt will have a good game. I think Tyreek Hill will have a good game. I don't know about if Alex Smith will perform the way he does. I don't think Carson Wentz is the guy you want to start this week. And I don't know if you start Chiefs defense with the loss of Eric Berry. We'll see. I'll start Zach Ertz. That's a good start for the Eagles. Vikings, Steelers. I'll take Steelers to win the game. I think Antonio Brown will have a big game. I think Bell will continue to be what he was last week, a non-factor. And for Vikings, it's going to be about what can Sam Bradford do against the Steelers defense. Can he pick it apart the way he did against the Saints? I don't think he will pick it apart the same way he did. I was really impressed with the Vikings' balance of offense. Dalvin Cook looked good. And then, if he throw into Thielen or Diggs, it's usually a pretty deep route or a little something across the middle that works. Patriots, Saints. I'll take Patriots all day over the Saints. Not impressed with the Saints. Offensive line looked terrible. Defense looks terrible. Those are two places where the Patriots will pick them apart at. If you got any fantasy weapons the Patriots have, any of those backs, any of those wide receivers, Gronk, I'd start them. Saints, I think Saints are going to get mauled this week. Bears, Bucks, I'll take Bucks. I think Bears are going to be better. Pick up Tariq Cohen if you need a back. For the Bucks, I think Mike Evans will have a big game. I think this will be a closer game than you think. Bears are really having issues at their wide receiver position right now. Lost, what's his name? Kevin White yesterday, lost Cam Meredith in the preseason. Dolphins, Chargers. I'll take Chargers to win this game. I think they'll get after action. Jay Bosa and Ingram are going to get after them. Their secondary is pretty good. And then offensively, I think Melvin Gordon will have a good game. I think Ajayi will even have a good game for the Dolphins. But good for fantasy running backs in this one, but I'll take Chargers to win. No brainer. I think Raiders destroy the Jets. I think Marshawn Lynch has a big game. I think they run the ball a lot behind him. Cowboys, Broncos. This is a game I got the Cowboys. Broncos are not the scary team that they used to be to me. Cowboys are the scary team that they look like. And so the Cowboys I think Cowboys will go into Denver and win that game pretty easily, run the ball all over them. But it'll be a good test to see, where this Broncos defense is. I'll take Cowboys, though. Redskins, Rams. I think Redskins are going to bounce back. If Kirk Cousins doesn't have any turnovers or can keep them to a minimal, the Redskins should win this game. The Rams and the Jags are the same to me. They had a really good defensive week last week. They looked good because of their defenses, but I'm not at all sold on thinking that they're better than they were. Their offenses had no pressure on them throughout the entire game. They had leads the entire time. Niners, Seahawks. I think Seahawks win this game. You know how the Seahawks are. They could be asleep the whole game and still win it. I could see them being asleep for most of this game, it being close, but at the same time, I'm going to take Seahawks to win. Russell Wilson should have a good game. If you don't have Paul Richardson, you need a wide receiver. He's a good guy to pick up. He's their new number 2. And then, running game, I would stay away from running backs with the Seahawks. We don't know which one's the guy. Packers, Falcons, this is definitely game of the week. I think Packers are going to win the game. I think Aaron Rodgers will manage the game well. I think the hangover that the Falcons are having, I think the Falcons have kind of cooled off from the hotness that they were last year towards the end of the year. To me, they're back to where they were, back to just another team. They're better. They're one of the better teams. No, don't get me wrong, but they're just another team. They're not hot like they were. I'll definitely take Packers. I think Rodgers is going to want to get a win. After losing last year there, or I guess this new stadium, but in Atlanta. Lions, Giants. I'll take Giants to win the game. I think they'll bounce back. I think Odell has a good game. I think they established the run game a lot better in this one. But for Lions, Stafford could have a huge game. Stafford could come back late. Golden Tate, start him. Kenny Golladay, I don't know if you start him, but watch him. And then running back wise, Abdullah had a pretty solid game the first game. He could be looking at some like more playing time than normal, but obviously Theo Riddick's going to be thrown in there. Zach Zeiner is going to be in on the goal line. And it's going to be a good game. It really depends on the Giants. If the Giants come out like the Giants can, then they'll probably win. But if the Giants come out like they did against the Cowboys, Lions will probably win the game pretty handily.